Hey everybody, it's Brad with a Floriani Total Control U video for you today. Today we're going to be digitizing with a run stitch. We'll be digitizing from a backdrop, and we're going to do it as one continuous stitch so that the design is going to sew out each element as one continuous line and not stop and cut between. So we're gonna aim for that anyway. Just gonna hit create a new design, and then we're going to load the image that I'm going to be working with today. And this is this was something that somebody brought in on a piece of paper that they wanted to turn into an embroidery design. And so she actually came in and wanted to get a lesson, and then I couldn't be there that day, so I couldn't give her the lesson. So I figured I'd just go ahead and use this as the artwork for the video, and then I'll put it up and she'll be able to watch the video and follow along and do it herself if she likes. So the first thing that I want to talk about is how I got this into the software. Simply, all I did was this was a picture of a piece of paper. I just took a picture of the piece of paper with my phone, and I emailed it to myself. That's all, right? So a lot of people don't have a scanner anymore. You know, it used to be everybody would have a scanner in their house, but now not so much. And so if you don't have a scanner, you can just use your phone. Now, does a scanner work better? Yes, because you don't get, like, see, you've got kind of like a shadow in the corner down here, and you know, kind of like a grayscale background. So if you have a scanner, use a scanner, but, you know, if not, just take a picture. But one of the issues with when you take a picture of a thing in the world is that your camera probably isn't 100% straight when you're doing that. So as you can see, my image is a little bit crooked. And so if I digitize this the way that it is, and then I go and try to sew it out, well, I'm going to have the issue where I'm sewing it out and it's going to look slightly crooked because I've digitized it slightly crooked. So before we do anything, we want to take care of that. So I have a couple different ways that I can go and adjust this. If we look at my grid, I can see that this purple line going across, kind of this line gets closer and closer to it as it goes, and I can try to use that as my my pole star here. I'll just grab, see on this top right corner, this blue circle, this allows me to rotate my backdrop. If I hover over it and then left click and drag, it will rotate. Now, the issue here is it doesn't show me like a little ghost of this line when I rotate it, so you can't see where you're ending up until you end up there. But I can see that this is actually pretty good. Another way to do this would be to hide the grid, which I'm actually going to. I'm going to hide the grid. I don't like, when I'm digitizing run stitches, I don't like having the grid. I don't know why. I don't. So the way you can turn your grid on and off real easy is over here on the left-hand side. You left-click on the button that says grid. Hey, no grid. And what I can do is I can pull in my own guidelines. If I move my mouse up into the ruler here and left-click and drag down, I can make my own grid, kind of. So here I can make my own line and then try to rotate relative to that if I wanted to. And I can check the rotation going the other way too, right? I think this line just isn't drawn straight is why that's not perfect. But at any rate, you want to pay attention to that when you're using an image that you have taken a picture to get the image in, because chances are it's not going to be rotated perfectly straight. And then incidentally, if you accidentally click off of your backdrop while you are monkeying with it, like if I left click over here, right click, if I select another tool, okay, so it's not as bad as it used to be. I guess they changed it so you can make a left click out here and it doesn't get rid of your backdrop tool. But if you inadvertently accidentally go and click the select tool like I did just now, and then you can't adjust your backdrop anymore, the way you get back to that is simply to just left click on the backdrop tool. In the middle of the toolbar here is right above the grid one. We left click on that and my backdrop tool is now selected. I can now go and resize and adjust things. Okay, so we're going to want to be able to do that, because the next thing I'm going to do is I want to size this so that it is like the size that I want it to be. Right now, this is a massive image, and that's another thing, that anytime you take a picture with your phone generates massive files these days. You know, this image size, what is this? I don't even know. This is so big. It's right now it's, oh, my computer is like, can't even keep up with it. 657 millimeters. What is that in American? This whole image is 2 feet wide, right? So you got to be careful when you bring in a picture that you do from your phone. If I digitize it at this size, it's going to be absurdly large. So before you start digitizing, you want to make sure that your picture's rotated. You want to make sure that your picture is a reasonable size. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and size this down. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to pick a specific size. I'm going to say that I want to sew this design out in my, let's say, 5x7 embroidery field. Okay, so what I will do is, instead of like sizing this so that this is like 5 inches, I'm just going to grab my 5x7 hoop over here. So if I go over to the left hand side where it says select hoop, and click on that, and then hoop here, I have to know that 130 by 180 is 5x7 in metric to be able to nail it the first time. But if you select a hoop, it will tell you down here in inches what size that hoop is. Okay, so this is 5.12 by 7.09, which in metric is 130 by 180. So that's what we call our 5x7 hoop in Baby Lock Land. We're going to hit OK, and there is the embroiderable space that I have within my 5x7 hoop. So what we're going to do is we're going to now have to go, like I said, if we click off of the backdrop tool, now I can't go and select it to size this down. We actually have to go and re-click on the backdrop tool over here. So we left click on there, I get my little controls, and I'm just going to grab one of the corners. I'm going to size this down. Now, the overall size of the image is not the design itself, because there's all this white space in the background of my image, so I don't want to just size the whole image to fit in here, because look, if I do that, then I'm wasting all of this space, right? So you want to nudge it until you get it so that it just the part that you want to trace fits in there, right? I'm satisfied with the position and size that I have this at. Now, if I wanted to set a specific size, I can certainly do that. I go over here in the properties and I can set an exact size. And then if I want to switch it from inches, or if yours is in metric and you want to switch it to inches, you do that by right-clicking on one of the rulers. Like across the top is a ruler and across down the left is a ruler. If you right-click, you can change your system unit anytime from metric to inches. So right now this is in inches, yours may be in metric and you want it in inches. You can switch between them easily just like this. Right click and then select inches or metric. So I may switch between that here and there. Generally speaking, you know, I'm an American, I think in inches, but generally speaking, small spaces, small sizes are easier to think of in metric. So stitch length, which we're going to be dealing with a bunch in here, we're going to be talking metric for stitch length, but the software doesn't even let you set, you know, the stitch length to like 11/32 of an inch or whatever. It doesn't even have that as an option. So the stitch length is always going to be metric. Now let's take a look at this. I'm going to start just arbitrarily. I'm going to start on this one. I don't know why, but all the ones that I've did practice, I did. I guess why we're going to start on this one is because this one isn't connected to a bunch of other ones, so it's kind of the simplest one to start with. So what we're going to do is we want to sew this design in such a way, or we want to digitize this design, I should say, in such a way that it sews in a reasonable order. And by a reasonable order, I mean I want it to start in one place and then sew continuously until it gets to the last stitch. And we have some tools that make it easier for us to do that. So the tool that we're going to be using to draw the stitches in this design is one of the digitizing tools. If we go up to the top of the menu up here, you see this little dissolving ball here. It's called the digitizing tool. So if we left click on that, we get a flyout menu. We got all these buttons. The one that we want is this one. If you hover your mouse over it, it says run stitch. It's got like a little dot with a squiggly line between them. We're going to left click on that, and what will happen is your cursor will turn into this crosshair like this, and they've got these lines that extend out from the rulers to kind of show you exactly where your cursor is. It's really handy because it's tough to see just the cursor by itself, especially when you're zoomed out. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to roll the mouse wheel on my mouse a little bit to do this. See how I'm just rolling it in? But if you don't have a mouse wheel, if you're just using like a laptop and not a mouse, you can adjust the level of zoom with this right here. Or you can use this tool right here, the magnifying glass will let me left click to zoom in and right click to zoom out. Okay, so that's if you don't have a mouse wheel, but I can just use my mouse wheel to zoom in and out. I'm rolling it right now. So that's how you can zoom in and out. Anyway, grab my, oh, not that tool, grab my digitizing tools and my run stitch. And so what's convenient about the way that this tool works is it's very logical as to the sequence of the stitching. So the first stitch is the first click that I make, and then as I click along, right, the last click, which I tell it is the last click by hitting the right mouse button. Bloop. The last click, oh, and here let me put this in 3D so you can see it a little better, and I'm going to turn off stitch points for a second. Yours by default will be off. And so what this does is it has automatically, you've got the green dot here. If I go into my shape tool, which I did by clicking on this little icon right here under my stitches, but this is showing me that my first point is my first click and my last point, that's the red dot, is my last click. And that is very handy because I can just draw it in the order that I want it to sew out. And as long as I'm just doing just a regular running stitch, which running stitch is just like a stitch on a sewing machine, it's always going to behave the way that I expect it, because if you use the run stitch tool, the start point is always the first click, the stop point is always the last click, no matter what else you do to that line. So like if I go in here and I monkey with this line and I like make it all with these crazy weird looking curves, right? And then it tries to follow that with my run stitch. That doesn't ever mess up my start point and my stop point, which is very nice. So I like to digitize using the run stitch tool, not any other way when I'm doing just run stitch work, because if I draw the artwork in first, right? So this is, if you're like your first day, you're not going to know the difference here. But if I'm using my artwork tool, right, it will start with, and then I convert that to a run stitch, it will start with my start point and my stop point in the same place. But if I go in and monkey with, let's see if I can make it do it. No, of course it's not going to do it. But if I have a complicated shape, just trust me. If you have a complicated shape, sometimes it'll mess with where your start point is. Like it thinks it knows better than you do, and that's why you want to use the run stitch tool for this kind of thing. When it really matters where your start and stop point are, you want to use the run stitch tool. Anyway, I know I've been yakking and yakking. We haven't even started digitizing. So we're going to get into a run stitch tool and we're going to start drawing this thing. Now the first click, I'm going to have my start point be the bottom of this little plant here. Okay, so we're going to put our first click there, right? Now the second click, right? If we look at the tooltip that's coming off of my cursor, it's telling me a length here. It's telling me in millimeters how long this stitch is. Now if I look on my top right part of my screen, my properties, I have my stitch length set for 2.5 millimeters. So why do I care, right? Why do I care where I put this? Because my stitch length is going to be 2.5 millimeters no matter what, right? Well, actually it's not. It will put a stitch in anywhere that you click. So if I put in a bunch of a bunch of clicks and they're only, you know, they're like sub 1 millimeter clicks, right? That's actually just put in a stitch everywhere that I click, because the way that this works is it will force a stitch in anywhere that you're clicking, because it's assuming that you're doing that to make it place a stitch where you want a stitch that's maybe shorter than 2.5 millimeters. Okay, it gives you that control, because sometimes you might need a shorter stitch. But what'll happen if you do that, if we go in here and look at the stitches, oh, I got a view. So if you want to see every stitch, you go to view, stitch points, okay? Or you can just hit the P button. We can see that we've got these stitches in here are real close together. And if I measure them, I'm going to use the ruler tool here. And if we look, so we've got, so say between this stitch and this stitch, we can see is 1.1 millimeters, right, which is really close together. And here we've got 0.9 millimeters, right? And so that's much smaller than 2.5 millimeters, which is what I actually have it set on. Okay, so what we want to do is not do that, because if you have a stitch that's below 1.5 millimeters, doesn't look great. And below 1 millimeter is just right out. So essentially, you can make a short stitch. Like if you need to make like a tight, you know, like I'm trying to like get this guy's fingers in here or his little toes or whatever, and I just need a shorter stitch, like right in this one spot. It's okay to go as small as 1 millimeter if you have to, right? You want to try to avoid not going below 1.5 millimeters. But if you have to, you can go below that. And then otherwise, you just, generally speaking, want to make as long of a line as you can without putting a point in, because you can just let the software put the stitches in at that point. But it will always force a stitch in anywhere that there's a click. Okay, that's just the way that it works in pretty much all digitizing softwares. Okay, so I'm going to delete this, and we're going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to grab the run stitch here. Okay, and then I'm going to go, and I'm going to do more of it this time. So I'm going to go from here, and then we've got kind of like a little bit of a bend in this, but I'm going to ignore that for now. And I'm going to go to here, and then it branches off and goes to here, right? Now I'm going to use my mouse to zoom out a little bit. I'm rolling back with my mouse wheel, and I'm going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard. I'm hitting to the right two, I just hit up a couple, right, just so that I can see this whole leaf here. And so here we have a thing where we've got this is going all the way around. Now what I could do is I could go and try to make this curve by choosing where the stitch is going to be. Okay, so if I'm like, okay, so from there to there, we've got 2 millimeters, that's fine. And then from here to here is a little over 2, that's fine. 2.5, you know, we don't want them to be too variable. You want it to be like around what you have it set to. So 2.5, that's fine. I'm just, you know, moving my mouse, but it doesn't have to be like nobody's going to be getting a measuring tape and be like, well, this was 0.5 millimeter off here. Now here's one where, okay, so here's where it matters, okay? Because from here, if I go the full 2.5 millimeters, I'm cutting off where this is kind of making this shape. So I'm going to go there, and then there, and then there. So that's over 1 millimeter, so that's okay, right? And then we're following the edge of this, and bringing it back. Now it's okay that this doesn't look like a true curve. It's okay, because the medium that we are using, stitches, are made of straight lines. So it's okay. It's never going to be a perfect curve. Stitches are not curved. They are straight lines. So anyway, rant over. I'm going to right click okay, to generate this, and we can see, cool, here we go, we've got this. Now there's something that I want to point out, because I do have stitch points turned on right now, okay, and when you have the stitch points turned on, there's one thing that can make it look a little bit confusing, and that's that if we look at my start point, I've got a bunch of little short stitches here, and then where I stopped, I've got like a bunch of short stitches here that I didn't tell it to put in. That's because those are the tie-ins and tie-outs. That's where the machine is going to tie the stitch in at the beginning, and then here is where it's going to tie it out at the end, except it's actually not. If you're saving this for a normal household sewing machine that reads PES or JEF or whatever, any of the regular, like, you know, Baby Lock or Brother or Janome or whatever format, Viking format you got or whatever, it doesn't matter. It will actually take these ties out when you save it as that file, and your sewing machine itself is actually the one that decides when the tie-ins and when the tie-outs happen. So you actually don't have to worry about these. So you'll always see a bunch of short stitches at the beginning and at the end of any segment that you create. You can actually kind of ignore those, or you could also go in and get rid of them so that you don't see them at all. in the properties menu, you can go up to transform and change the tie-in from basic to none, and the tie off from basic to none. But there's no reason to do that other than if you're trying to see specifically, you know, whether there's too many stitches in one place and those tie-in stitches are making it confusing to see. When you save your design, like if I save it as a PES, those go away. So those aren't actually part of the design. But anyway, let's take a look at some of the other things that I can do here. Now, if I want to try and mirror the artwork a little bit better than I am right now, because I've got a straight line going from here to here, right? And it's really not a straight line in the artwork. It's got a little bit of a bend to it. So what I can do is I'm going to go in my sequence view here to do this. I'm going to select my segment that I've just made. I'm going to left click it in the sequence that selects it. The reason I like to do that instead of selecting it in the field like this is if I select it in here, it's easy for me to accidentally move it like that, okay? And it's also harder to click it because I got to click on this little itty bitty part. I just hit undo up here, by the way, to undo me moving it. But anyway, that's why I like to select in the sequence view. But I'm going to activate my shape tool. The shortcut to it is right here. It's at the bottom center of your selection box of whatever you have selected to get to your the quick shortcut to your shape tool. I'm going to click on that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the line right here and just kind of bend it out a little bit. I'm going to grab it and bend it, and then maybe put a little bit of a bend in it right here. Okay, and now when I right click, it's going to realign my stitches. And you see how we've got like a bit of a bend here now that we didn't have before? That's kind of, you know, that's a way that we can try to more closely mirror the artwork. And now you see that like actually this was kind of like an S bend here, right? So you could actually click on your curve and we could grab, you see there's a point right here, we could grab this and kind of make a little bit of an S shape right there. Now in the end, ultimately, especially for right here, that's not going to make a huge amount of difference. So I wouldn't probably for like my first few projects really worry about anything to do with trying to make it perfectly match, because especially if you have something that's going to sew out kind of small, it doesn't really matter. Now, if I wanted to take this and be able to blow it up really, really big later, then yeah, that would matter. But I'm just showing you that it's possible to go in and get a curve out of it that way. But it's still never going to be a perfect curve, kind of no matter what you do. So let's go ahead and do the inside of this. So let's talk about how we go from one segment to another. So basically, as long as you start your next segment, so we're going to go up and grab the run stitch again. As long as you start your next segment somewhere around where the stop was, then it will just continue it as though the two segments were not separated. It'll just sew out the whole thing. Now, I know, okay, I know that this is not touching this in the artwork, okay, but guess what? It's going to be touching it when we sew it out, okay? There is no way to have it stop and tie here and cut, and then stop and tie here and then cut. It's gonna put a jump stitch there. Okay, even if we made it a separate piece, it's not gonna look like a separate piece because it's gonna put a jump stitch there. So we are just gonna pretend like this drives right into here, and I'm gonna start my next click right there. Okay, now remember, we want to have around the same stitch length as we have the machine set to if we have our druthers, okay? But if we need to, then we can make it a little bit shorter, right? I don't need this to extend any further than this, so we're going to keep that. And then to backtrack, I'm just going to go click right back on the nodes that I've already clicked. And as long as you're somewhere close, it doesn't need to be dead bang perfect on there. Okay, you just need to be somewhere close. Nobody's gonna be able to be looking at, look up here, we're looking 1200% zoomed in. Nobody's gonna be, 1200% zoomed into your stuff, right? So here, let's go ahead and we'll get this, and I'm following this one now. I just gotta remember to keep them like right around 2.5 millimeters when I can. Somewhere between 2 and 2.5 is fine. Okay, and then if it has to be shorter, that's fine too, like I said. Just as long as it's not, ideally, we don't want it below 1.5, okay? But it can be. Now I'm going to come all the way down to here and then back out the other way. It can be as low as 1 if it has to be. You want to try to keep it at least a 1.5. All right, so there, and then there, and then there, and then we got one more. Now remember, we did curve this one, but if we have stitch points on, and remember, every stitch is a straight line. So if we go from this stitch to that stitch, and then from this stitch to this stitch, it's going to end up the same, right? And if we go and look, I'm going to, in my sequence view, you see I've got this little plus sign here. If we hit that, we see that these are two separate pieces. We can, if we want to make sure, we can check and make sure that my start point is where I started there and I stopped there. So everything's good so far. Now, if we want to watch the way that the sequence sews out, which I recommend doing as you go throughout the design to make sure that you haven't made a weird mistake, you can grab up here right where this little icon, or not icon, this little kind of like a little slider thing is, and if you don't see this, you can hide this and show it with this button here, slow redraw. So you may have accidentally hit that if you don't see it. So go ahead and hit that, and there it is, and we can left click and drag and watch our stitching sew out as though we were sewing it out just like that. Okay, and then remember, those little tie-ins and tie-outs, those will go away when we save the design. Okay, so from there, we're going to go from here up into the next leaf. All right, so here we go. Grab this, and I'm going to start right where my stop was. And we're going to go around the outside of this. Using my arrow keys to pan through the design. Somewhere between 2.5 and 3. Now here we've got one that if I want to have this sharp point here, there, I've had to do one that's 1 to kind of get the shape that I want. And you can pick a different stitch length too. So like if you want to be 2 millimeters instead of 2.5, you can totally do that. And then so this time I'm actually going to make this part of this stitch here, right? So this, I'm just going to, instead of stopping it, I'm just going to go straight up into here because there's no reason for them to be separate pieces. I just kind of wanted to stop and talk between them. So I'm just going to keep on going here. But then just know that if you get interrupted and you have to stop, you just have to find where the last click that you made was in the design last, and you can just start right there, and the machine is not going to behave any differently. As long as the start and stop points are right on top of each other, it is not going to treat it differently at all. Okay, and then I just come back through my points the way that I came, like this, and then I want to come all the way back to here because then I'm going to come out this way. And then we're going back. Oops. If you make a mistake, just backspace with the backspace key. We'll fix it. There. 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 And then we're going back out of the design, following my own footsteps as I go back. Okay. So there we go. All right, I'm going to right click to generate this. Hooray. And there's my beautiful stitches. And we go on to the next one. Now, I didn't need to generate that. I just wanted to kind of show you what my shape looked like. And at this point, I can just go ahead and go to the next thing. So I'm still in my drawing tool, right? As long as I don't go and pick a different tool, it keeps me with the same tool selected. So I can just start right back here, right? I'm just going to go and actually, when I was practicing, I was doing a 2 millimeter stitch length. So I keep accidentally behaving as though it was the a 2 millimeter stitch length, but it doesn't matter that much. A 0.5 millimeter isn't a big difference. Now here, this is going to be kind of tricky because this is a tight curly Q, right? And I don't want to get below 1 millimeter for these stitches. So You just got to watch it. I mean, we're like knocking on the door right there with that one. Okay. One 1mm stitch hanging out in one place is okay, but if you get a bunch of them next to each other, then that's when it really looks like a mess. Okay, and then I'm just going to jump right over to here and come up to this next branch. Now, if I want to here, where I've got like a big long straightaway, it's okay to go and do it, you know, longer points. I don't, you know, if I'm not trying to create that curvature, that definition, if it's a straight line, you can just go ahead and do the straight line. Now here we go. This is, okay, what should we do? Should we do the outer part first or the star first? It actually doesn't matter that much, although if it were me, which it is, I would do the star first because I want this to be kind of underlapping the circle, I think. But it's kind of a matter of artistic choice. You just do it however you want it. Okay, and all these stitches are acceptable. And then I'm going to go around the side this way because I already have this line here. So let's see there. And then I want to make sure that I touch each of those points that I made just so that I know that it's going to overlap. So I just make sure that I either put the same point or I just make sure that my line is kind of crossing over them. Okay, and then we're coming back down this way. Okay, so there we go. We've done two sides at once here, right? Now there's nothing stopping me from going up and doing the next curly Q. But if you're not comfortable doing a ton of it at once and you want to just take little baby steps, that's okay too. So it's perfectly fine to generate this, look at it, and just kind of make sure that, you know, everything is sewing out the way that you expect by running the slow redraw tool. Right? And say, okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. So, okay, we know that we stopped right here, so this is where we're going to start. We go back and grab our run stitch tool again, and then start going. And you just got to be careful not to put your points too close together. I mean, that's really the main thing with a run stitch. And you know, it gets tedious because it's a lot of left clicking. But the thing is that the automatic tools just are not able to do this. I don't know why, but there is a tool. It's called the red work tool. Oops, I just went too far. It's called the red work tool, but it is total garbage. I mean, it just does not trace any image that I've ever tried to do. And it doesn't, even if it is able to trace the line, like it doesn't do it in a way that is conducive to turn into embroidery. So it's just this specific thing where we are like making like a quilting outline type thing, and you know, we're following some artwork that we already have. Well, you just have to do this the long way. I mean, luckily it's not hard though. You know, it's literally just a couple things you gotta be mindful of. Okay, I'm going to go and do this star again. But it's actually a really good beginner basic type of project is to do this kind of thing, because you get an idea for, you know, what happens when you left click, what happens when you right click, and you're going to use these for every, you know, these skills for every thing that you digitize in here. And once we have it digitized, like, you know, we have it. We can sew it out as many times as we want. That might have been too short of a stitch. So I'm going to go in there, and then back down through here. I just hit backspace because I didn't like my placement there. Remember, you can always hit backspace. One thing to know about any of the drawing tools in this is that the undo button does not work while you're drawing a line. It only works to hit the backspace key. If you hit undo, you will lose all of your work, so don't do that. Or you probably already did that if you've been making mistakes this whole time and been like, what the heck is going on? That's what's going on. That is just how it works. So the backspace key is your friend when you are drawing. I don't know why they can't just make the undo button also work, because I feel like that would really help. Okay. I had to make a pretty short stitch again up there, but that's the way that it works, is to get that, you know, higher definition, the stitches have to be closer together, right? There's a hard limit at 1 millimeter. Does the machine explode when you do below 1 millimeter? No, but it doesn't really ever look good. Oops, made a mistake. Backspace, there we go. Okay, now I probably made a mistake doing this the way that I did. I probably should have had this point be like right here, but I'm just gonna see how it goes. Traveling back down through the center of this. Okay, and then back down through the stem here. So we want to try to avoid running over ourself more than once, but it is perfectly acceptable to run over yourself once to get in and out of a spot. That might be too short of a stitch. Let me see. All right, so from here to here, and then from here to here. Okay, so I just wanted to get back down to there, and then bring this back up to this next branch. Okay, and then we're getting up, we're going to do this leaf in here. Okay, now let's see. I'm going to go around, that might be too short. I didn't pay it, wasn't paying attention to where my point was. I think I am just going to go out this way and just not have this little cusp in there, because at this size I really just don't have the space for it, and that's okay. Remember, we're looking really close here. We're 1200% zoomed in, and we're essentially drawing in individual stitches here that are, you know, 2 or so millimeters long. Okay, I think that's going to look okay. That is way too short of a stitch, though, from this to here. Huh. I think, where did I... Oh, I went from there to there when I started. I'm just going to go all the way from here to here. That's going to be fine. Because this was not part of this stitch. This is part of the stitch going up. Okay, so yeah, we're good. And I mean, it's not really necessary to be that like super crazy about it. I just, you know, I'm trying to show you the right way to do it. Okay, and we go back down to here, and then I'm going to take this all the way back down to here before I come up to the next. I'm going to right-click to generate this and just kind of zoom out and take a look. Okay, so you see, you know, we're moving right along here. You know, it's definitely a time-consuming process, but it's not that time-consuming. So what I'll do a lot of time is just, you know, put some music on and go ahead and do it. And once it's done, it's done. You know, you can sell it out as many times as you want. Once you have it in there, it's not that bad. And actually, one thing that can really work really well for this kind of thing, if you just don't have the manual dexterity or endurance with your mouse click in hand to do this, is if you have a tablet device that has a pen, you can actually use the pen as the mouse and then be clicking where these are just using a pen, and that might be less wear and tear on your hand in the long run if you're going to do a lot of these. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just grab my my run tool again, and off we go. This is where I stopped last, so we go ahead and keep going here. But yeah, I actually have a Surface Pro that with a pen that works pretty good for doing this kind of thing. And then if you have the Ultimate Floriani Edition, it has the Sketch-a-Stitch built into it. Using the sketch tools, you can actually just kind of sketch stuff like this. It's not awesome for tracing something perfectly, but for like making like a rough sketch of something, it's really great. And actually for drawing this in the first place, it's actually really good. So I actually prefer it as a drawing tool than as a converting from like a JPEG to a stitch design tool. But like if you're the one that can just draw this kind of stuff, rather than draw it and then trace it, you can just draw it right in the software using the Sketch-a-Stitch, which I have a couple videos on doing Sketch-a-Stitch in here on my YouTube channel. Ooh, I should have made that all the way to here. All right, and then we're gonna have this be like kind of the central point that they come back from. Like that is fine. That's pretty much a straight line, and this one's pretty much a straight line. Right, so I'm taking shortcuts now, right, where I'm going longer, although I don't want it to be like that. Actually, I don't want to pick how long the stitch length is, but like I said, you can do that. Anyway, the Sketch-a-Stitch part of the program, that's if you either purchase Sketch-a-Stitch or you bought the Ultimate Bundle, has it built in. I don't actually have it on this computer, so I have it activated on my my touchscreen. This is my big computer that I make videos on. All right, so I ran this whole way up here. This is just essentially a vertical line. So I just clicked and clicked all the way up to here. And then here we're going to go and make this out of just a few clicks, right? Although this one, yeah, I can't help myself. I gotta draw this one. Okay. Would it have mattered? Probably not. Hard to tell. Okay, there, and there, and there, and there, and there, and there. Now we continue around the circle. Oh, you dummy. And then back down. And then I can just, as long as I click in the same points that I started in, that's totally fine. I can see I didn't get it perfect right there. Probably you'll be able to see the stitch diverging there. Let's see. We're going to right click it. And yeah, you can kind of see where I messed that one up. So we can fix that though, just by clicking on the run tool here. Clicking on the run stitch, that last one that I just made, that's going to be the last one in the sequence. And then so you see, I can't see that shortcut to my shape tool, but there's another one right here in the context sensitive menu. Click on that, and all I got to do is just move these guys closer together. See, all fixed, all better. Okay, and then let's see, how much more do we got? We got quite a bit more, so I'm just going to go ahead and power through the rest of this. And you know, you can watch as I do that. So let's see. Oh, there we go. Run tool. And down we go. Up to this here, and then here. Just making sure I don't do any that are too short. Okay, and around the corner we go. I don't know if you can hear, my wife is trying to make our husky howl upstairs. So if you hear what sounds like ghosts, howling, that's what that is. There, there. Okay, we got the next one here. We've got a bit of a curve there. This is not quite all a straight line, so I figured about to there. To there. Let's say to here. And then to here. And then we've got this kind of like butt shape again. Down. Oh, yeah, it doesn't really matter if you're over. I was going to backspace that, and then I just decided not to. Okay, and then back down through the way that I came. Oh, you dummy. Look, I totally skipped this part up here. Okay, so that was... I don't have to start over again, but what I am going to do is I'm going to use my backspace key to get all the way back to where I was. Okay, so back to here. So I just backspaced a bunch. Can't believe I missed that. So if I had generated that line and I wasn't still in the middle of digitizing, I would probably just have redone this whole section. Would be easier than trying to fix that. Sometimes it's easier to cut your losses and just start over. Now in this particular case, I didn't have to because I hadn't right-clicked and generated the stitches yet. So I could just backspace to get back here. And it was no big deal. Because now we're back to where I was. But that's what happens when you're, just kind of zone out. You gotta pay attention to what you're doing. That's not good. Now, is there any good reason for me not to do the middle part first? No, I don't think so. It's just what I decided to do. Is there a benefit to have done the middle part first? I don't think so. I don't think it makes a difference, really. There's some things that are like that, where, it's just like you just do it the way that you do it, and if you did it a different way, that would work too. Oh, see, that's not going to work. See, that can't come from there. That's got to go to... Oh, geez. All right. So we're going to have this come here, and then there, and then there, and then there. Okay. Oh. God, I am bad at clicking day. Okay, there we go. All right. All the rest of these are fine. That's not great right there, but I'm going to leave it. There. There, you can see how kind of cavalier I'm getting with being accurate to the original artwork. But really, you don't have to be 100% accurate to the original artwork because, number one, nobody's going to see it. Number two, even if they could, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference because we are so zoomed in right now. So you get it as close as you can get it, and it's going to probably be more than enough anyway. Okay, where are we at here? A couple more, and then we're done with this part. We go there, and then there, and then there. Okay, so I'm not trying to follow that precisely because we're just not going to get that tight of a curve with stitches at a reasonable stitch length. So I don't want to have super short stitches that are going to look like crap. So it's better to have a blocky look than real short stitches at this scale. You know, like if you're doing something really big, then, you know, the bigger it is, you know, the overall size of the design, kind of the smaller the stitches are relative to the lines, kind of the more detail you'll be able to pull out of stuff like this. But, you know, doing stuff that's small and intricate, it's just the nature of the beast, is you're gonna have it look kind of blocky, and that's okay. You see I'm kind of getting off the outline there. I'm not really worried about it. Okay, and then we're gonna go up to here. See where I'm going with this? Don't like that. Backspace is your friend. Okay, and then we got one more little star flower to go. Okay. Don't like that. Okay. Whoop. Okay. That should be the whole thing. So at this point, I'm just going to let it generate. Right click. Bloop. And we've got this entire plant has now been traced and is you know, ready to go. Now, once we have this entire element, if we look over here, we can see we've got all of these different bits, because I didn't draw it as one continuous thing, but because I have my start points and my stop points in the places that I do, it is possible to take this whole thing and turn it into one line. Okay, so if I select the whole set of everything that I've got, and I right click and I do a join, okay, you don't combine, you join, and what that will do is it will connect the start point and the stop point of each one of my lines, and it still retains the order that I drew it in. Okay, so my sequence is going to run exactly the way that I drew it, but it becomes one continuous line, okay, rather than having to deal with all of these individual pieces. If, for instance, I wanted to move the whole thing or something like that, or resize it, or, you know, select one bit over another, like this is the way that you would do that to connect them together. Now, for in here, this, yes, all of this stuff is touching, okay, and that just means that you have to plan for where you're going to start one shape and where you're going to stop it. So what we want is we want to think about the order that we do this. We want to sew this, and let's say that we start here, okay, and we go up, and our first spot where we could jump over to here would be this leaf. Okay, and when I say jump over here, because these touch, right? So we could go in and do this and then go over here, but that leaves, you know, all this space up here done. So what I think I would probably do here is I would go up and do these leaves and this leaf and this leaf, skip this leaf, okay? Then go up and do this whole flower, right? And then travel back down, and I would do this. I'd figure a way so that I could go in and do like this, right? And then this, and then back through here to jump into the next flower. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying for there not to be anywhere that I'm running over, other than in the middle here, like in the middle of these leaves, I'm going to be running over myself more than twice. But other than that little like detail bit, I don't want to be running over myself more than twice. And so if I do it that way, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to do it real quick. Okay, so let's see. We're going to go here, and this is going to be quick and sloppy, okay? Okay, we're going to ignore this altogether. Okay, so right here, I'm not following around this. Don't do that. That would not look as good. So what we're going to do is we're going to go there, and then we're going to go back like this. Then I'm going to go up and do this middle part here. And I think I am just going to pretend like that was connected all along. Not that I'm going to actually sew this out probably, but let's see. Can't help myself but try to do it some semblance of right. Okay, now here, the only way to get back is to travel either through there or back through there. But I'm okay with going over myself twice. So I'm going to go back through this way, because if I went through the middle, I'd be going over myself 3 times, right? Which that's not what I'm telling you to do. So we're going to go up to the next leaf. Okay, again, we got to go back down here. Okay, and then back through these nodes. Okay, back up to here. Now we're going to ignore the other flower here again. My hand's getting tired from clicking, so I mean, I can totally see, you know, this is going to be something that's going to take most people more than one sitting, because I mean, I'm getting wore out. Of course, I'm getting old myself now, so there's probably some young digitizing whippersnappers out there that could left click longer than me. Alright, now this is the one that we're going to skip, okay? We're going to skip this whole thing, okay? Because this is going to be our travel point into the next flower. So we're going to go right past it. And then we're going to go, let's see. Yeah. We're going to go like this. So we're going to do this whole daisy here. Yeah, my clicker's getting tired. You can see I'm like running out of steam. Okay. Back up. Oop, don't like that. And we're going to do that whole circle later in the middle. So just a little bit more here. I'm not going to go and, go and do this whole other flower, but I just want you to see kind of the handoff from one shape to the next. And notice I haven't been taking breaks between on this one. You don't have to do that. Like I was doing that just kind of to be able to stop and talk to you guys. You can just go and do the whole thing as one continuous line. The only trouble with doing it as one continuous thing is if you screw up and hit that undo button, you're gonna be really mad. All right, now this here is where I need to go and do the circle, okay? Because this is next coming down here, right? So here we go in, we're gonna do the circle. Okay, and then we come back down this way. Then we do this one. I'm going to do the inside first because the outside is the part that joins. And then, oh crap. You know what though? I forgot about this little area right here. I should have come up there and then jumped into the middle. That's alright. We're going to jump over to here and then go down and back over. That's more stitching right there than I am happy with, but it is what it is. Okay, and then we go all the way back to here. Oh, backspace. Okay, to close that, and then we run through where we were before to be able to jump into the next daisy. Okay, and that's basically what we're gunning for, is for when we go from one shape to the other, we don't want to have to backtrack through an area that we've backtracked already. So you got to have a plan for when you get to a thing that's touching and decide, okay, so where am I going to go from here? But the nice thing about this type of digitizing is it's very easy to stop and then look and think with how it's going to go, because we know that our start point needs to be just right there. That's all. As long as we start right here, we're good to go. So yeah, so this is how you would go about digitizing this design. There's just no way to do it automatically. It just requires a person. It requires an intelligence behind it to make a reasonable run stitch design. It's just kind of the way that it works. Now if you have areas like right here where it does something that you don't like because you didn't put in enough points, that's okay. You can go in and just use the shape tool to go in and nudge those points to have them where you want them, so that it more closely follows the line the way that you want. So, you know, in here where I was being really fast and sloppy, I can go in and tidy these up, and, you know, that's not a problem at all. So, anyway, that's how to digitize with the Run Stitch tool. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.